Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump has only been back in office for less than 3 months, but I'll tell you what, he's already done the impossible. For over 3 years, Ukraine and Russia have been locked in an absolutely brutal war. Tens of millions of lives have been lost, hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent, and throughout all of that time, not once has this war even come close to ending. That is, until yesterday afternoon. You see, President Trump just had a one-on-one phone call with none other than Russia's Vladimir Putin, and now, for the first time in 3 years, we are seeing real signs of de-escalation. In fact, take a look at this.
We got a readout of your call with Vladimir Putin, and it was a fairly optimistic take. Vladimir Putin agreed to a ceasefire immediately on energy and infrastructure,
right,
but not to a 30-day ceasefire. Tell us what happened.
Well, you have a situation. We have a lot of guns pointing at each other foolishly because it would have never happened if I were president. That was not a war that was supposed to happen. And it did happen. So that's where we are. And right now, you have a lot of guns pointing at each other. And a ceasefire without going a little bit further would have been tough. Russia has the advantage, as you know. They have encircled about 2,500 soldiers. They are nicely encircled, and that's not good. And we want to get it over with. Look, we're doing this. There are no Americans involved. There could be if you end up in World War III over this, which is so ridiculous. But, you know, strange things happen. And I think we had a great call. It lasted almost 2 hours. Talked about a lot of things and toward getting it to peace. And we talked about other things also.
You hear that, folks? When I said that President Trump has done the impossible, I wasn't kidding. Now, of course, after a brutal, drawn-out conflict like what's been going on in Ukraine for the last 3 years, peace isn't going to be achieved overnight, but here's the reality. Trump negotiating this 30-day ceasefire on energy infrastructure marks the first real step toward peace that we've seen since this war began. And now, folks, there's something I want to make very clear about all of this. Not once in 3 years that Joe Biden was president during this war in Ukraine did Joe Biden actually ever talk to Vladimir Putin. That's right, Joe Biden and the Democrats never even attempted to de-escalate this entire situation. Folks, that is absolutely shameful. Now, I want you all to take a listen to how these peace negotiations between Trump and Putin really went down, but first, I want to say real quick, if you guys enjoy the daily news coverage, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton with my daily struggle against the YouTube algorithm. But okay, folks, take a look at this.
Was there non-negotiables mentioned by Putin? It was reported that I think the Kremlin media actually stated that he demanded an immediate cessation of aid to Ukraine in order to get to this multi-step deal.
No, he didn't. We didn't talk about aid. Actually, we didn't talk about aid at all. We talked about a lot of things, but aid was never discussed.
In the readout, it also stated that both sides want to get to an improved bilateral relationship, the United States and Russia.
That's true.
How can we trust that Vladimir Putin actually wants that, in that he's not also being influenced at the same time by his close friend, President Xi of China?
Well, look, we have our own discussions with President Xi of China, and he wants to get along also, and he's looking to get along, and we're looking to get along with him, and we will. We have a problem of trade where we have a very big imbalance with China. With Russia, we don't have that much trade, and they'd like to, and we'd like to also. They have some very valuable things for us, including very big forms of rare earth. They have a lot of earth. You know, they have a big chunk of real estate, the biggest, actually the biggest in the world for a country, by far. And on that, they have things that we could use, frankly, and that other people could use. I think that President Xi would like to get along, and I think Russia wants to get along with the United States. I also think we're a much different country than we were just a few months ago. We're a country that's now respected. We were not respected. We were being laughed at. We had incompetent leadership.
Well, folks, that is probably the understatement of the century. Here's the reality. Not only was Joe Biden's leadership incompetent, but him and his administration were absolutely hell-bent on pushing us into World War III. And so now Trump is stepping in to clean up the mess. Not only is he actively working to end the war in Ukraine, but he's also making efforts to stabilize relations with both Russia and China. And look, it's not as if the U.S. is ever going to be best friends with these countries, but you know, wouldn't it be in everyone's best interest if the world's top nuclear superpowers weren't constantly on the brink of war? because personally, I think that's probably a good thing. But you know what? Speaking of Russia and China, take a look at this.
So as a student of history, which I am, and I've watched it all, the first thing you learn is you don't want Russia and China to get together. With that being said, no, it's not a big part of it, but maybe that'll happen or maybe it won't. Obama really forced them together through energy and bad energy policies. And what he did, so many different things. He forced a marriage which would never have taken place. It was not a natural. And for one reason, Russia has tremendous land, a lot of land, and China doesn't have enough land. Russia has a much smaller population than China. And it's sort of a natural, it was always a natural enemy situation. They're probably friendly now, but we're going to be friendly with both. I think we're going to be friendly with both. China needs us in terms of trade very badly, but we have to straighten out the deficit. We have now more than $1 trillion deficit with China. It's not even believable. And we're going to be doing something about that. And with Russia, they would like to have some of our economic power.
And so, folks, this is the difference between a competent leader like President Trump and an incompetent leader like Joe Biden. Not only is peace President Trump's #1 goal, but he actually knows how to achieve it. Because as we said earlier, this is something important to remember. From the moment the Ukraine war broke out, for a full 3 years, Joe Biden never even once had a conversation with Putin. I want you all to really think about just how insane that is. How is peace ever supposed to be reached or negotiated if the US refuses to talk to Russia? So you know what? Given all of that, me personally, I think that Joe Biden and the Democrats are at least in some part complicit in everything that's happened over the last couple years. And folks, I'll tell you what, even right now at this very second, as Trump's peace talks are underway, Democrats are absolutely losing their minds. They're furious that Trump is actually trying to stop the war from escalating into an all-out global conflict. And in fact, as it would seem, some Democrats actually want things to continue escalating into a global war. They are quite literally absolutely insane. They are unhinged. But you know what? While we're speaking about the progressive left's never-ending criticism of President Trump, take a look at this.
The criticism that you've heard since really 2015 is that you have more in common with Vladimir Putin than you do with globalist leaders, maybe some NATO leaders, and in this case, with Zelensky. You're both nationalists. Zelensky's more of a globalist. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, I am a nationalist, but I'm a nationalist for the United States, not for anybody else. And it's interesting because there's nobody been tougher on Russia than me. I'm the one that pointed out Nord Stream 2, and I stopped it. Nord Stream's the biggest pipeline, I guess, in the world, taking care of all of Europe. And it was being built from before I got there. And somehow they were on the way. It was going to be, and I stopped it. It was just stone cold dead. I stopped it in its tracks. That's not somebody that's being particularly nice. It was the biggest project they ever had. I had it stopped. When Biden got in, he immediately approved it, like immediately. One of the first things he did in office was he approved Nord Stream 2. Nobody ever heard of Nord Stream 2 until I was president. I said, what are you doing? You mean you're building a pipeline to Germany and various places in Europe. You're paying them billions of dollars a month, and then we're paying a lot of money to fight them. This is not going to work out well. And it stopped, and then Biden approved it, which was a really stupid thing to do, but he did it.
And so, folks, here's the thing. Not only is President Trump completely correct about everything he just said, but it also gets even crazier than that. Right at this very moment, Western Europe is sending more money each year to Russia to pay for Russian energy than they're sending to Ukraine to help them fight Russia. Yes, you heard that correctly. As things stand right now, Western Europe is quite literally funding both sides of this war. So what that means is that while millions of people are suffering, thousands are dying every single day, and the global economy continues to spiral downward as a consequence of this conflict, Europe is still lining Russia's pockets with energy money. And yet somehow the left-wing media is still delusional enough to think that Joe Biden's strategy was working, that all of this was anything but a complete and total disaster. So you know what? Here's my final opinion on all of this. Thank God that finally we have a president back in the White House that is willing to pursue peace and put an end to all of this bloodshed. But now, folks, before we wrap up with today's video, I want to say real quick that I've actually gone ahead and made a community Facebook page where I'll be posting additional news and updates as it relates to all of this. So if you guys use Facebook, check out the pinned comment down below and give that page a follow. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there, and hey, like I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy the daily news coverage. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, as always, stay safe.